Hi, I'm Bernadette Rabuy, and I'm the Senior Policy Analyst at the Prison Policy Initiative, and we are a national research and advocacy nonprofit based out of Massachusetts. And today I'm going to start with helping to show what the criminal justice system nationally looks like, and also kind of give a sense as to why it's a little bit misleading to think about the criminal justice system as one single system. And then afterwards, I want to give an three examples of misconceptions about mass incarceration that I think we should think about as we think about reforms. So first, as Marissa talked about, mass incarceration hasn't always been the case. Historically, it boomed in the 80s and it's remained stubbornly high. And also globally, we have a globally unprecedented rate of incarceration. So if you look at this graph, this is our incarceration rate compared to our to other countries that we consider our peers oftentimes. And this is if we pretend that the states in this country are countries. And when we map that out, we see that Georgia would then have the third highest rate of incarceration in the entire world. And blue are the countries, and pink are the states. So you can see that the second country, when we're only looking at countries, would be Turkmenistan. And that's interesting because Turkmenistan is a country that our government calls an authoritarian government. And when you look at the other countries, I'm not going to show them right now, but there are other countries with a lot of strife and genocide. So this is our system of mass incarceration. And this is really a snapshot, so it doesn't really show the growth, but it shows where people are locked up, under whose control, and for what offenses. And I apologize, it's probably a little bit hard to read, but I just want to point out a few things. For one, as you can see, federal prisons, which is that gold slice, isn't actually that large of a portion of our criminal justice system. So oftentimes, I think we learn and pay attention to some of the decisions that are made at the federal level. But actually, we can make a lot of progress with the state prison system and local jails, because those are the largest slices of our criminal justice system. And there are more people in local jails than there are in federal prison. It's also interesting, and while you can't see this here, people go to jail 11 million times per year. So not only should we think about a snapshot in time of how many people are in our criminal justice system, but we should also think about the churn. So how many people are entering these facilities? How many people are being released? Are there services upon release? Those are all things that we should be thinking about as we think about our criminal justice system. So there's a few other observations we can make when looking at this. One is that less than half of the people in jails have been convicted of anything. So as our colleagues from the Southern Center talked about, people are stuck in jail because they can't afford money bail, and so they have to wait for their trial date from the jail, and that is the majority of people who are in jails. The rest of the people in jails are convicted of very minor offenses, and traditionally will spend less than a year in jail. Second, it's not true that most people are locked up for drug offenses. However, there are a lot of people locked up for drug offenses, and most people are locked up for nonviolent offenses. So those are drugs, property such as theft or burglary. So as you can see, violence, there are a lot of people locked up for violent offenses, and the way that this graph is portrayed, so let's say someone has multiple offenses, they're always going to be shown on this graph for the most serious offense. So some of those people might have a violent offense and then also a drug offense. They're going to show up there on the violent offense. Third, there are a lot of youth locked up in our criminal justice system, and thousands of youth are locked up for technical violations of their probation. So I just wanted to show this, to show the growth over time and point out how much of our criminal justice system has to do with state prisons. Okay, so shifting gears a little bit to misconceptions. The first misconception is that our criminal justice system only involves prisons and jails. In reality, most people are not in a prison or jail, but they are on probation or parole, which we've talked about a little bit. So I think as we think about reform proposals, we need to be aware of this and make sure that we're thinking about things that can actually reduce the size of our criminal justice system and not just shift people back and forth between probation, parole, and incarceration. The second misconception is that privatization is only related to private prisons. So as we talked about earlier, there's privatized probation, and there's just a lot of money flowing throughout the system, whether it's private or public actors. For example, one of the issues that we work on at the Prison Policy Initiative is related to the prison phone industry. And the prison phone industry consists of a small number of companies that have monopoly-like control. Actually, the Federal Communications Commission has actually called it that it's very close to monopoly. And they charge $1 per minute for phone calls home from prisons and jails. And these phone companies also share a portion of their revenue with the counties and states that they contract with. So what does this mean? Well, it means that it incentivizes counties and states to not push for lower rates, but to actually push for higher rates, because that's money that comes back to them. So as you can see here, phone calls are at the very bottom. It might be hard to see, but it's about a $1 billion industry per year. The third misconception is that the mass incarceration only affects people behind bars. So our system really punishes families too in our communities. And so I just want to talk about something that we're working on at the Prison Policy Initiative, which is video visitation. So this is the new form of visitation that's going on throughout jails in this country. So what we have here is video technology that's being used in jails. So now when someone wants to visit their loved one in jail, they drive over, they're in the jail lobby, and they use this computer system to visit their loved one who is in that same jail, maybe in the same building, maybe in the building next door. And as you can kind of see if you look a little bit closely, there's actually not really a way to have eye contact. And as you see, the seats are bolted down, so you see someone trying to raise their child so that they can understand who they're visiting. So this is this new booming trend all throughout the country. We have about 15% of jails that are adopting video visitation. And I think it's a really important issue because it shows the ways in which our criminal justice system is punishing family members who have not done anything wrong and are just trying to be there for their incarcerated loved ones. And so I think the good news is that we've come a long way from the lock them up and throw away the key mentality that used to be just the only way to think about the criminal justice system. And there are examples of ways in which we are doing better. So we've seen some state prison systems decide not to take commissions, so not to accept money from those phone companies. And I think that's a step forward. I think also the attention that jails are getting is a step forward. And it's reason to have hope. So this is just an example of a young girl in California who was at a rally at the state capitol there in support of in-person visits in those jails. Thank you.